So I've played Silent Hill 2. I actually played it with my wife. So we have an agreement that when we play any scary game, we play it together. She gets the remote at the start, and once things start getting real, she hands the remote to me. So, although I want this review to be as accurate as possible, I can confirm I did not physically play the first 22 seconds, just everything afterwards. Okay, so maybe that's an exaggeration, but let me tell you, this game is relentless. It is a horrific experience that gives you no time to breathe. As I play with my wife, I will hand her the remote when we feel that we've hit a safe part in a horror game. She refused to ever take back the remote for the rest of this game. That's how intense this game is. I was 9 years old when the original Silent Hill 2 came out, and I remember playing the set of 2 through 4 when I was about 13. I remember that the experience of playing those games actually impacted me for life. To this day, if anyone asks me what is the scariest game I've ever played, I will say Silent Hill. Resident Evil games look like Disneyland compared to the horror held within a Silent Hill game. It's not just scary in terms of its appearance, enemies and gameplay, but it was able to mess with you psychologically as well. It leaves a mark. When you ask Silent Hill fans about the series, they will usually earmark 2 as one of the best in the whole series, possibly the best overall. So, does the remake live up to its predecessor's high standards, or is it yet another rehashed remake that we didn't really need? Well, let's get into it. Quick side note, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Also, I am considering doing a video on the history of Silent Hill games. If you would like to see that, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, back to the video. So I played this game on the PlayStation 5 and it looks amazing. Its stunning world looks alive and its depressing colour really creates a depressive environment. From the very moment you start, the game reflects what you can expect going forward, a feeling of isolation. The handcrafted environments look so realistic and it's very clear how much attention to detail there is. The amount of care and detail put into each part of every environment continued to astound me. The building's interiors really managed to capture the feeling of a desolate place that was abandoned long ago. Each room is full of decorations, items which create this impression that the places you visit were once lived in and have now been left alone for a long time. This constant intrigue over mystery of what happened constantly runs through your mind. Likewise, the game takes full advantage of the environment to put the player on edge. The town is full of thick fog, making it nearly impossible to see what's a few steps ahead of you, making you feel lost. The dark hallways are so dark that you won't be able to see what it is that's making that nearby sound until you walk a few inches from it. It is terrifying. The gameplay is split into 3 aspects, which both have their own difficulty setting. There is combat, as you'd expect, and puzzles as well. These combat variations can provide either an easier time for those with the light setting, while a more punishing and skillful time for those seeking the hard difficulty. Light, standard and hard. Depending on which you pick, the scale of damage you receive and deal out will be affected. So light means you hit hard, take low damage from enemies, and hard means that you deal low damage and take big damage from enemies. Standard is a good balance of the two. The original Silent Hill 2 was an over-the-shoulder angle, and the remake sticks to that formula. The way the player feels when controlling James Sunderland, it's very similar to recent horror games like the Resident Evil 4 remake, Callisto Protocol, or even The Last of Us Part 2, minus the crouching and stealth mechanics. In the journey, players will come across 5 weapons. 2 of them are melee based and the other 3 are guns. There is a secret 6th weapon available on the New Game Plus mode. The melee combat felt extremely responsive. With a strike button and a dodge button, it leads to some genuinely enjoyable combat experiences. If you study the enemy, you will learn their patterns and figure out when to dodge correctly and when you can get a good hit in. In my experience, if you just go in swinging, ignoring your dodge button completely, the enemy will almost always deal damage. It means players will be punished for panicking, which is funny because there is a lot of that in this game. I remember one moment in the game where I just picked up an item and an enemy appeared right in front of me. I panicked, and my first instinct was to swing my weapon sporadically, and let's just say the plan was not as effective as it could have been. But that's what this game does to you. Gun-based combat is similar to that of Resident Evil 4 Remake. You have your aim button and your shoot button. Naturally, as a survival horror game, bullets are scarce and you'll learn to ration them out over time in anticipation of the next big enemy where you'll need them. Overall, the combat really felt responsive, rewarding and strategic. I did feel like the dev team nailed the combat in this remake. The second aspect of this game is puzzles. Difficulty can be selected here as well, with Light, which is easily discovered hints and clues for all puzzles and riddles, Standard, which provides subtle hints that provide an even challenge for puzzles and riddles, and Hard, which is extremely challenged due to the vague hints for puzzles and riddles. I played on Standard and the puzzles were really well thought out, and it gave me a genuine feeling of accomplishment after I figured out the puzzle. I won't put too many here for spoiler reasons, but there is one example where I was in a room with a safe in the middle with a code needed. There was a poem written on the wall, and then writing all over every corner of the room. It required me to seek the clues, cover the entire room, and then use my brain to figure out what the solution was. In a world of games that are so easy, where the game almost is desperate to shout out the answer before giving you a second to figure it out on your own, this was really refreshing. There's nothing worse than when you're in a game like Uncharted, you're trying to figure out a puzzle and then the game's like, hey doofus, it's this button. It's like, I wasn't even asking you, jeez, give me a second to figure this out. Anyway, the game's puzzles are so well done and it will leave players stumped at times, but in a good way. The final aspect of this game is exploration. So throughout the game, you'll venture from area to area. For example, the first main area is the town of Silent Hill. After you accomplish everything there, you'll need to move to the apartment block, and so begins the next area. Now, I remember running from the first area in a panic, you'll see why, and then arriving in the apartment complex feeling safe. Little did I know, there is no safety. I was not aware of the horrors that awaited me in this zone. That is essentially how this game is set up. Each area is a new challenge which captures its own aesthetic and personality that differentiates from any area that you visited beforehand. All areas feel unique and contain many new grotesque enemies for you to handle. Just in regards to the enemy variety, there is a good selection of enemy types and each of them are just as horrific as they were in the original game back in 2001. Just now, they're in high definition. But when you arrive in one of these new areas, you're sort of left alone to figure out what you need to do. You're given a map of the area and it's up to you to start ambling along, checking every nook and cranny and begin to uncover what it is you need to do whilst here. As you find locked doors, safe rooms or interactive items, James will jot it down on the map. Eventually, what usually starts feeling like a daunting task begins to come together and you're able to progress. To give you an idea, in my 20-ish hour playthrough, I never really felt lost on where to go. There was just one point, but it was my fault for taking a break and then coming back. If I had continued playing the game, this probably wouldn't have happened. But every environment is so well designed and it will leave an impression on the player. In Silent Hill 2, you play as James Sunderland, a quiet, if broken man still recovering from the death of his terminally ill wife 3 years prior. Out of the blue, he receives a letter. The name on the envelope says Mary, the name of his late wife, inviting him to find her in the lakeside retreat that they once visited, Silent Hill. This is the general start of the plot, and I won't go into too many details about the story, but there are new things for returning players to see. At the beginning of the game, James is warned that the town isn't safe, and his response is, I don't really care. And let me tell you, that is absolutely true. He really doesn't care, because in reality, you would run from there at first sight of the shadows that lurk in the fog. The music is also fantastic. The unsettling soundtracks, background noises, distant sounds, they constantly leave you in pure fear. The radio static that comes on when an enemy is nearby, which is both in the game audio and on your PS5 remote as well, will start a process of panic like, where is it? Where is it? I mean, it's so well crafted. As for long-term Silent Hill fans who played the original, I am happy to say that you will be thrilled here. The game pays homage to everything in the original and honours it in a great way. It adds a few new things, tweaks some side plots in a positive way, but for the most part sticks true to what made the first game so successful in the first place. I won't say too much to avoid spoilers, but long-term fans will be happy here. Now, I just want to touch on the horror element of this game. As I said earlier, Silent Hill to me was another level of scary to any other game I've played. Now, I love Dead Space, Resident Evil, and all the other great horror games, but Silent Hill always seemed to be one level higher in terms of fear factor. It may have struggled in other areas where those games strived, but the horror was always the most blood-chilling. Well, the remake has continued this trend, but it's also improved a lot. In the original Silent Hill, it often felt that the combat was a little clunky, camera angles were a little bit off, I didn't really feel fully in control. In this game, although I am petrified, I do feel in full control. That with the right strategy and concentration, I can beat anything. It's a fair game. This game is not for the faint-hearted. If you get scared easily, you need to play this with a friend. This game is relentless. Every single moment of this game had me on the edge of my seat, and I never felt comfortable. You will struggle to catch a breath. Even when running around areas that you've visited before, the game will surprise you. It wants you to know that there is no peace in the world of Silent Hill. From the first minute I started it until the last moment before the credits, I was generally fearful. I never felt overpowered, I never adapted to the scares, I just constantly was petrified, having to push myself psychologically to get to the next part. But that being said, it's an amazing game. It is a fantastic experience which left me wanting more. I would play it for a few hours and take a break, but it was the only game that I wanted to play. I was hooked and I wanted to keep coming back and see what's next. Like any good horror game, it scares you, but that's what keeps you coming back. It is easily one of the best horror games that I've ever played, and if you generally love horror games, this is not to be missed. So in summary, the game is beautiful, the story is interesting but subtle, the gameplay pattern is addictive, and the ambiance is outstanding. This game captured everything great about the original, but brought it to today's graphical standards, and then up to even further. What we're witnessing here, in my opinion, is a return to form for Silent Hill. This series peaked on the PlayStation 2 with Silent Hill 2 through 4, but over time, after a few weak releases, the series sort of fell from the heights that it was at. But now, I generally think this marks a return of one of the greatest horror series in gaming of all time. The game is fun, brutal, and of the highest quality. I want to play it again. But this isn't just a great Silent Hill game or a great horror game, this is a great game overall. The original Silent Hill was successful, but not by the standards set by Resident Evil. Silent Hill 2 sold 1 million units, whereas Resident Evil 2 sold 5 million copies. But now, I generally think that Silent Hill is about to enter the same arena as Resident Evil. I generally think it will become a fan favourite from those who love horror games. The studio who made this game, Bloober Team, could not have nailed this any better. They have delivered a game that exceeds expectations and should cement its name into the spotlight when it comes to discussions about the top horror games of today. So I'm going to leave it here. This is a game that you need to experience or watch someone else play yourself. I don't want to ruin any of the experience because these type of games do thrive on your first experience. Not knowing what's coming next, not knowing what's going on. This is what makes these games so special. But from my standpoint, I'm giving this game essentially full marks. It set out what it wanted to do, exceeded expectations, and has shaken up the Silent Hill series and seen it return to its former glory. But now with today's graphics and gameplay mechanics. New and old fans of Silent Hill and horror games in general could not have asked for more. If you're a fan of horror survival games, don't hesitate to get this one. It's absolutely worth it. Just make sure that you're ready, and this game is definitely not for the faint of heart. You have to be mentally prepared to get through this game. Anyway, that's it for this one. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I am considering doing a video on the entire history of the Silent Hill series, its rise, its fall, all the way up to today. If you would be interested in that, please leave a comment and let me know. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out.